So good morning, everyone. For
Good
those who don't,
morning.
good morning. For those who don't know me, I'm Matt Harms. I'm the founder of Pen for Hire. What we do at Pen for Hire, we're a premier ghostwriting and author coaching firm. So if you've ever wanted to write a book, our clients are thought leaders, intellectuals. They've overcome amazing adversity, and they want to use books as a way to share their experiences. My co-host for this is Mark Allen Roberts, the founder of No Smoking Mirrors, also a client. We recently worked together, so we're going to get some unique perspectives during this webinar from what I do, what Mark does, and then what we learned together based on the amount of content he already had when he came to us. So we're going to jump into some of this in more detail in a bit, but I just wanted to start this webinar with one of the things we start all of our client conversations with, which is, why should you write a book, right? There's probably dozens, if not hundreds of reasons we could think of to write a book. Some of the top ones are to build your company brand, to build your personal brand, to leverage it as a business tool, which is really going to be the focus of the end of this webinar, and how we're trying to revolutionize just how easy and affordable that can be for the average business owner. We want to talk about how you can increase your business's referrals and how a book can impact your net promoter score, the ways books can help you share knowledge, and depending what you're looking to accomplish, how you can leave a legacy that's going to far outdate the good that you're able to do in your lifetime. With that said, I want to pass it over to Mark Allen Roberts, tell you a little bit about himself, how we came to meet each other, what he does.
Yeah, I appreciate all that Matt and his team did. I've been wanting to write a book for about the last 10 years. I would start, and then I went through all those self-doubt things that we all deal with, like, who's ever going to want to read this? Is it really worthy of being in a book? And then I was really lucky. One of my buddies, who's written like 6 books, said, I want you to meet Matt. I think Matt can help you. I've been helping companies grow for just under 40 years. I've been blogging since 2000, and my blog is ranked #1 in the world for fixing sales problems. If you Google the phrase fix sales problems, I'm #1. So I've been writing a lot, but I can't promise that it's very good. And that's where working with Matt and his team kind of taught me what I didn't know. But I have a pretty good LinkedIn following. I think it's up to like 30,000 people. I've published some ebooks in response to common problems that my customers face. I do a lot of keynote speaking. And then I just got certified in a process called Scaling Up, where I help people grow their businesses profitably. But I'm also certified in DISC, some different sales assessments. And like a lot of you, I mean, we've been trained in a lot of different things. And then, like I said, a friend introduced me to Matt and his team, and they made this dream of mine so much easier. Why did I want to write a book? I don't know. I love helping people. Obviously, what I wanted to do, though, was make my book like my calling card. A lot of people reach out to me, and for whatever reason, they can't afford to work with me, maybe. I tend to help small to mid-sized companies. So I thought, what if I wrote a book that almost anybody could afford? And even Matt and his team coached me to price it so that almost anybody could afford it. And I published it. The other thing I wanted to do was use that book as a calling card. Very good friend of mine, another author, wrote a couple books, and he was at a trade show. He just happened to bump into the vice president of a $5 billion company. He wrote him a short note in the cover of the book, handed it to him. That one exchange has turned into over $500,000 of revenue for him over the last 5 years. So if I could get something like that, it more than pays for the time as well as the cost of the book. But what held me back? What held me back was self-doubt. That was a big one. The perception of how much time it would take. I've heard horror stories, like a buddy of mine, it took him 3 years to write a book. He spent over $60,000 writing his first book, $35,000 the second book, and he really didn't get any sales. But the Pen for Hire process was really easy. And obviously I'm bragging on them because they made it easy. I'm a really busy guy, as like Roy's on the call, he can attest. You know, I'm out training people, I'm doing virtual training, I'm doing coaching, helping companies grow their business. But what Matt and I did was, you know, I was almost halfway there, and chances are a lot of you are as well. You know, if you've already written a blog, if you have a podcast, if you've written any ebooks, um, if you've done any training programs, all of that is content. And what made working with Matt so easy was his team helped me create that framework. And then I just pulled from the content that I already had. And of course, you know, his amazing team helped me with English and, you know, framing it correctly. And interestingly, just this morning before this call, I had breakfast with a buddy. He owns a digital print company. So I brought 3 of my books. He had me sign one to him. His name is Terry. And then he said, look, you got a couple extra. So I gave him 2 more. And he's going to be giving my book to his next appointment. Will that turn into business? I don't know, but it sure couldn't hurt my brand. So I volunteered when I heard Matt wanted to do a webinar. All those perceptions that we have about writing books has now been changed. It can be a lot quicker if you already have some content and Matt's team knows how to reshape it. It's a lot less expensive than what my friends have paid. And it actually helps you get that story that's inside of you out. So again, I hope that adds value to everybody. At the end, if we have time, we'll have questions, but it was a fun journey. I learned a lot. I used to joke with Matt that I shouldn't have, you know, paid his fee for the month, because he actually started using some of what I teach and it helped his business. But yeah, Matt, I'll turn it back over to you so you can help some of these folks get their book published.
Thank you, Mark. We'll definitely have time at the end for Q&A, by the way. However, I also want this to be interactive. So if there's something that jumps into anyone's mind as we're going, raise your hand, please. Natasha's watching the waiting room in the hands. She'll make sure that we know to address whatever it is you want to ask, because I don't want that thought to slip away. I know we're all busy and thoughts come and go, which is why I have my little notepad here. So the first question I want to ask you all before we move forward is, you have put your hand up physically or the virtual hand. How many of you have thought of writing a book before? I see a hand. I see 2 hands.
Trying to get to my chat. I don't know where to do it virtually. So here you go, stuck with my hand.
I see the thumbs up. I would hazard to guess, if you're on this webinar, it's probably gone through your mind once or twice. Otherwise, I don't know why you want to spend an hour with us this morning. But either way, we're happy to have you. So Mark said something that kind of blew my mind, and I want to address that before we jump to the next slide. When he told me he had the #1 sales blog in the world and how much content he had, I think, Mark, one of my first questions to you was, what the hell do you need me for? Right? You can clearly write. You're clearly doing something right. And it was really a lot of those kind of self-doubt, those objections, and all writing is not created equal. Right. You can be the best blogger ever, but you're writing short form content. That's not necessarily going to connect directly to your next blog and to your next blog. Whereas a book, you sort of need to have a logical progression to keep your reader engaged and help them solve the problems that they're looking to solve. So that was where this idea started dawning on us, that not everyone, these are just a couple of the titles that we've put out in the last 2 years. Some of these are mine, some of these are our clients, some of these have gone bestseller. We've helped over 24 people with the Pen for Hire method put their book out. And we're going to talk about the difference between the Pen for Hire method and this new method Mark and I have created based on our working together. But I promised you guys we were going to come back to the 7 reasons you need to write a book. And that's exactly what we're going to do now, because Mark definitely hit on one of them. Actually, probably hit on several of them. So one of the #1 questions I ask people: how many clients can you currently help in a day? So if you're a coach, if you're a consultant, if your business is in any way, shape, or form dependent upon you working with your clients, you only have so many hours in a day, which means even if you're working 16 hours a day and you're doing 2 appointments an hour, you can only help 32 people a day. Then take that a step further. How many people, as Mark said, can't necessarily afford to work with you at this point in their business or their career journey? The book allows you to drastically increase the amount of people that you can touch. Those may be people who can pay you now and just wouldn't have known about you because you didn't have the time. And they may be people who can't pay you today, but your book gets you in their head. It gives them an insight as to who you are as a person, as a professional, and how you can help them. So if they can implement anything in your book that helps them generate enough revenue to hire you personally, it will happen. Mark already gave you a great story on how that happens. The next is credibility. We're living in a world where people want everything immediately. People can Google your name and in 30 seconds think they know everything that you do. And prior to COVID, having a book was kind of a great addition to getting speaking jobs, to really helping present. After COVID, it's become pretty much a requirement. There's almost no event coordinator, training session leaders who bring anyone in front of any room of size that does not have a book. And the reason for that is it's their reputation on the line. How do they know you can get up there and speak for 30, 45, 90 minutes if they have nothing to fall back on? When you have a book and you've got 150, 250 pages of your knowledge, there's no question you've got something to say. So the book really shows them up front that you are a credible authority in what you do.
Hey, Matt.
Yes, sir.
Another idea on the last slide is part of what I do is I'm a sales trainer. That's a big part of my business. And what we teach people is people buy emotionally. They buy based on trust and competence. So what better way to help improve their vision of your competence than have them to read your book? We talked a little bit about Net Promoter Score in the beginning. About a third of my business's revenue is doing research. We interview customers of our customers. How are they happy? Are they satisfied? But more important, are they willing to refer people? And one of the top reasons why somebody will refer and have a high Net Promoter Score is actually what we would say is the culture of your business. So aside from writing a book that you write, is there an opportunity to share the culture of your business through a book? Just an idea. I didn't mean to interrupt your flow, but yeah, let's hear about a door opener.
Yeah, you can interrupt me anytime. That was actually on my list for later. So we're going to come back to that in a different vein, but thank you for throwing that in there because it does tie in with that credibility slide. Number 3 is the door opener. And Mark told a great story on this where that happened to be in person and kind of in the moment, happened to him again this morning. However, you can proactively use your book as a door opener. Books are the new business card. That's been my motto for like the last 18 months. And I can't tell you how many clients I have who have used their books as a mail ahead to a high value prospect. Because here's the amazing thing about books. They don't get thrown out, ever. If you're on this call and you've thrown out a book ever, please raise your hand and let me know. And I'm not counting donating to the library, donating to the veterans, giving it to a nursery school. No one throws out a book. I've got a ton of books. I don't know what to do with, but I won't throw them out. So when you make a sales call to a high value target C-suite executive who's incredibly busy, they're probably not going to take your call, especially if they don't know your name. And even if you get them on the phone, it's going to be, why am I talking to you? But when their assistant gave them a package the week before that had your signed book in it with a note about why you want to connect with them, and it's sitting on their desk, and then you make that sales call, you're highly likely to at least get them on the phone, possibly get a call back. And even if it's not them, they might give that book to someone else in their organization who turns out and reaches out to you, right? So in Mark's case, that call ahead may be given to their chief revenue officer. It may be given to their chief marketing officer because they're like, hey, this guy can help us generate sales. See what he has to say. Everyone is solicited all day long. This is a way to really differentiate yourself. It's the most expensive business card, but when you think about the return on investment, your normal traditional 10-cent paper business cards, you give out 1,000, you're lucky if you get a call back. Send out 100 books, I can guarantee you're getting at least a few calls back. Number 4 is a value add. So depending what you're already doing for your clients, Mark hit on the know, like, and trust factor. People want to work with people that they know, like, and trust. If someone's never met you before and you're competing against, I don't know, 100 other experts who do what you do, what makes them know, like, and trust you more than somebody else? Well, a lot of people in the businesses that we're in do webinars like this. They have sales training courses. They have online courses on Kajabi or Thinkific. They have all of these different, as I like to call them, buckets of their marketing channel. So books, much like a course, much like a webinar, they're there to solve the reader's problem. No one reads a book, I mean, outside of fiction. If someone's reading a nonfiction book, it's because they want to improve on that in their life. If someone's taking Mark's webinar on how to have explosive sales growth, chances are they're looking to grow their sales. So they may take Mark's webinar and say, wow, that was great. Like, he really resonated with me, but I want more. But maybe they're still not ready to hire Mark because, you know, that's a big jump from the webinar to whatever Mark's fee is. So they'll, oh, this guy has a book too. They'll buy the book. After they've taken your course, they've read your book, you know, and I'm not saying you have to have a course. I'm just trying to give you the bigger picture here is you were passively developing relationships with these people where they now feel like they know you, they like you, they trust you, they read your book, they took your course. They're much more willing to give you that 30-minute consultation to hear how you can help them in a personal situation. Number 5 is brand enhancement. This ties in a little bit with what Mark said about culture, but we hear brand all the time, right? You've got Apple, you've got the iconic brands where everyone knows. They probably don't need to write a book. But if you're a, I don't know, $5 million company that most people haven't heard of, how do you get your company's name out there more than you already are, more than the traditional marketing channels? Right. I'm gonna actually open this up to questions. When you're trying to advertise your business, what are some of the areas you guys have spent money on?
Well, from my own experience, a lot of small businesses spend money on search engine optimization. They improve their website. They might hire somebody as an assistant to help them gain LinkedIn appointments. But again, I mean, the power of a book, I mean, people buy, you know, based on competence and trust, but 70% of the people buy to avoid risk. So one of the ways we can help them avoid risk is actually let them get to know us. Today, as people shop digitally, I think the pandemic accelerated that, but over 70% of the sales process is over before somebody speaks with you. So why not lead with what really matters most to you and hopefully something that can help them? And that's your book.
Thank you, Mark. And Roy, I think you were trying to throw something out, but you were on mute. So I don't know if.
Sorry, Mark hit it with the SEO and the social media marketing, that kind of thing. Pay-per-click, we didn't mention that, but pay-per-click's another avenue where you can buy your brand in place and all that stuff, but it does add up.
Yeah, people buy lists. The 2 things you just mentioned, public relations, paid media. By the time it's said and done, you can throw thousands upon thousands of dollars out the window every month trying to get your brand the attention that you want it to have and still completely miss the mark. So if you start to think about it, and we'll get into the cost of this later, a book per lead is probably one of the least expensive and most effective ways to share what your brand is all about, what your company is, because this isn't also just about you. It doesn't have to be just about you, depending on the size of your company. You may want to shine the light on what your entire organization does. Marketing publicity ties in with our last one. Books are conversation starters. In fact, Mark, I'm going to pick on you for this one. What happened when you started to tell people that you were working on a book?
I had a lot more conversations. I started getting invited to some trade show webinars. And even on my planes, trains, and automobiles trip from Canada recently, you know, I got to know a lot of the people whose flights got canceled. And at one point, this older couple says, "Hey, what do you do?" And I'm like, well, I actually help companies grow, explosively. I mean, not just 2 or 3% a year, really. And they started talking to me, and all of a sudden I had 2 books left over. I gave him one. Here, he's the CEO of a $40 million business that his son just took over. And he said, would you mind if I gave my son your book and maybe you could talk to him? I mean, that's how simple this is. It doesn't feel salesy. What
Yeah.
you're doing is you're putting it out there, you're sharing your vision, you're sharing some of your gifts, even if your book maybe isn't, sales, but everybody has a gift. I believe everybody's destined for greatness, and why not share your greatness? And, they can safely learn about you in the quiet of a flight or at home. And then if they want to engage, give them a way to engage. Like Matt had a great idea in my book. He says, you know what, Mark, don't put all these tools in the back of the book, put a QR code and have it go to your website. And on my website now are all these helpful links that people can zoom in with their cell phone, look at the QR code in the back of the book. And again, I track that stuff, and we're getting an amazing number of hits, just people reading the book and they're wanting to get some of these free tools. So again, it's about helping people and, growing your brand.
Linda, did I see your hand up, or was it
Yeah,
answered?
thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Talking about marketing and publicity, I self-published my middle grade book last year, and I go out to do events, and I just talk to people on anywhere I see people, and then we get into a conversation. I just talk about it, and handing the book out is a terrific thing. It's a large book, but I tell people the different things that I threw into it that makes it easy to read as an adult or as an older adult. I tell everybody it's for 8 to 88 years old. But that publicity for me is just getting out in front of people at events. And as it turned out, I was just invited to speak to the Delaware Association of Libraries just through conversation and handing somebody a book. So it definitely works.
Thank you for that validation. I really appreciate you sharing it. And that's actually the easy part, right? Because you got the book done. It's like, oh, well, here's my book. The other part of this is before it's even written, you can start generating media publicity. You can start generating traffic for your business, because people will hold you accountable. All of our clients, and Mark can attest to this, when we start working together, I tell everyone, like, oh, when should I tell people I'm writing a book? Now. Like, the minute you have started and you're starting, you tell people, because one, they're going to hold you accountable. You may not think Joe that you play golf with on Sundays is going to remember you told him you were writing a book 2 weeks ago, but he's going to ask you when your book's coming out. So you're going to be forced to finish that book. Otherwise, he's going to ask you every 2 weeks for the next 2 years until you're sick of hearing it. But also, they're going to ask you what your book's about. And it's a free opportunity now to start telling them more about your business and how you can help them, or about your fiction series and how great it is and why they should buy all the books. Everything in life is a sale. You've got to market yourself and give you the best leg up over your competition as you can. And Mark said it perfectly. A book is a zero pressure sales tool, because they're reading it in the comfort of their own home or an airplane or a train. You're not there telling them to buy anything or, hey, do you want to sign up? They're going to read that book and they're going to make their own decisions. Next, last but definitely not least, is giving back to your audience. So if you already have clients that you're working with, right? I'll just keep using Mark as an example since we're in this together. He works with large organizations. So it's not uncommon for the owner of an organization to be so happy with what you're doing, and they have you come in, you're training their salespeople on whatever the basis is, but that's not an everyday thing. So what better way to give back to all of their employees than also giving them your book? And that's at your determination of, hey, do I charge them for this book? Is it included in my normal consulting fee? Is it a freebie, as a value add-on? Because in Amazon just changed their pricing, but roughly you can print a 200-page business book for $3.50 as the author. So if you've got a $5,000 a month consulting gig with a company, and you send them 100 free books for the year as a thank you, what it cost you, $350? You look like a hero to them. They're getting a tremendous value, and you're the first person in their mind going forward.
Well, and the other thing to consider is too, the way adults learn, right? We might learn about something new. It's called knowledge transfer. Then we might try to apply it, right? And then there's after learning, right? So what just happened to me late last night, I didn't even tell Matt yet. I have a client, they have over 100 salespeople in the pharmaceutical industry. I've been training them for about a year now. And I just mentioned to the trainer, I says, hey man, you might want to buy my book. I really went deep into how to train adults in my book. And he says, well, how much is your book? I said, oh, it's like 19 something. Well, why don't I just buy it for everybody on the sales team? He says, you keep talking about post-training. Why don't we include your book in our training program? I'm like, cool, knock yourself out. Now, of course, it's my idea, right? But no, it was a great idea. And I give away books. One of my buddies, Ed Wallace, wrote an amazing book on how to build business relationships. Trusted Advisor is another book I have people. So what if someday your book starts being given away or bought to help others? So again, I didn't mean to interrupt, but it's kind of fun. I mean, we just published last week. It hit the top 1% of books last week. And I haven't even started promoting it yet.
And I love the example you just gave that I didn't even know about, because it's going to tie in with another example that I give that's a slightly different way to use the book to this end as well, which is we have a client who is a music producer. She just signed a multi-million-dollar deal with Randy Jackson to sell some of her intellectual property, but she has the only scouting program in the country. So if you want to be a music scout, you go through her. The new book that she just wrote is the field manual, basically everything that she teaches in this course that I think 100 universities around the country have signed up to now offer to their students. They have to buy the book to go along with it. It's required reading for the course. So that's just another way that it's the chicken or the egg, right? Did the book get her into the university? Maybe not, because she was already fairly well known and had a lot of other proof points behind her, but now she gets to sell a copy of the book to every student who takes her course across 100 universities.
Wow.
Chances are she's going to become more well-known and that business venture is going to go through the roof. So hearing the Mark, you just pulled that off last night, only a week in, it's just further proof that I don't dream this stuff up. Jump to our next slide here. All right, so we live in a changing world. Everything is evolving, right? We can talk for hours on AI and all the different things that can make writing easier. And that's not to say they can't, right? My new favorite slogan is AI is not going to steal my job. Someone who can use AI better than I can is going to steal my job. Because AI can help you generate ideas. It can help you write blogs. What AI is not going to do, it's not going to be able to help you figure out who your audience is. It's not going to be able to help you figure out what your message is. And it sure as heck's not going to sound like you. And that is the key part that I think a lot of people who write books and fail miss, is that just writing a book isn't good enough. It has to sound like you. Like your personality has to be in the book, your experiences, everything that you bring to the table. If you just throw words on paper, it's not going to captivate anyone. They're not going to feel like they know, like, and trust you. So while the landscape is changing, it's not necessarily in the ways we think. And this is going to lead into what me and Mark and I came to realize during our time working together. So the old way, which is how most people were writing books before I put together my business model, your timeline to write a book on average was going to be about 18 months to, and the question marks are there for a reason, because you may never finish, right? There is absolutely nothing. I started writing my first book when I was 18. I didn't finish it till I was 40. So there's self-accountability there. There's a lot of things that factor into how quickly does this book come out? And by the time it comes out, is it even still relevant anymore? Your commitment on the old way was going to be 300 plus hours. And I can tell you, it takes even me, who writes every day, to finish a book from beginning to end about 300 hours. So that doesn't change from my perspective. The investment would be about $50,000 to $100,000, right? So between the hours and the investment, the old way was very restrictive so that only people who maybe didn't even need a book could afford to put a book out there. The Pen for Hire way, over the last 2 years, we created a system where we could guarantee our clients, as long as they showed up for 1 hour a week to a Zoom meeting or sent us an hour of recorded content, we would get them a completed book in 6 months. Commitment from the client, 1 hour per week. The investment, depending on the topic, our prices are ranging anywhere from 20 to 40,000. So much less hours, much less money. But then along comes Mark, #1 sales blog in the country or in the world. And we realized we could cut this down even further, right? Because the content is there. It's no longer, hey, let's generate the topics and let's figure out. No, it's let's pick what we want to use from what you already have and then determine how we organize it logically. Commitment now 2 hours per month. So time commitment's cut in half again, and your investment's down to 10 or 20,000, depending how clear the blogs are, the quality of the writing, and the other content. But you can just see the progression of the ways it's become so much more possible to get the book out. How are we able to reduce it this drastically? We kind of just touched on that, but I want to go through some of the other things because we've used the word blog a lot, but I really want to reframe that to content because it doesn't just have to be a blog. If you have a podcast that you've done and you've got more than 12 episodes, I would hazard to say every episode could be a chapter of a book. If you have a training course that's a few modules long, all of that is material that we can draw from and then expand upon for your book. If you've given training courses and you've got slides, I have a client in the UK now, we're actually building her book off of her training slides. So there's varying degrees of work, which is why that price is on a sliding scale, because some of these forms of content come with more words than others. Some have a little more logical work and organization behind it. But we're able to, once we identify your audience, your goal of success, what you're looking to say, we can then go to work and figure out what you have that aligns the most with that and start putting it together for you, where all you need to do is read it and approve it. Now you're at 2 hours for a strategy. What else do you need to get started? 2 hours for a strategy session. What we do there is we spend an hour going through your content. We spend an hour trying to identify what is your goal from writing this book. Because if you don't know why you're writing the book, it's going to be a failure. If you're looking to increase your sales growth, if you're looking to acquire new clients, those are all how we target your message and your audience. We want to know what you're going to define success as. If you come to me and say, I want to sell 1 million books, I'm going to tell you, you probably want to go to a firm that's not so specialized in writing, but they're more specialized in writing or rigging the system. And in the business world, selling 1 million books isn't necessarily going to make you all the money you think it is, right? Mark gave an example before of a gentleman who made $500,000 off giving 1 book away. I don't even want to hazard to tell you how many books you need to sell to make $500,000. It's a lot more than you think. So we do all of that in the 2-hour strategy session. That gives us a clear view. We work with a 50% deposit and then 2 set milestones. So you can review the progress, make sure you're comfortable in getting what you're paying for, and that the book sounds like you. And then this is actually what we spoke about before, but I do want to come back to it. Mark, what's the #1 contributor to a company's Net Promoter Score?
Yeah, it's their culture. When we talk and we interview people, again, we don't just send you a survey that nobody wants to fill out. We actually interview you. I have 26 people on the phones and we have conversations. And at the end, we produce an executive brief. But the #1 indicator is the culture. If you believe one of the reasons why somebody buys from you is your culture, then why not lead with that? Why not share that vision? Share maybe how you've built that so other people can build a culture like that. People still buy from people. One of the chapters in my book that Matt and his editor suggested was, Mark, you keep talking about human to human selling. We ought to turn that into a chapter. So we did. But yeah, Net Promoter Score. Will somebody refer you to other people? The #1 reason is how they feel your culture when they work with you. So if they're not working with you, why not share your culture in a book?
And everyone likes to talk about culture, but there's a big difference between telling someone we have a great culture here and letting them read about that culture in action, like real world examples. So in Mark's book, as with almost all of my clients, we have real case studies, right? We're not giving away any companies' names or identifying information, but we're telling stories about what was my client's problem when they came to me. How did we help that client fix it? And then what was the result? Because that is the truest indicator of your culture. If you're writing in the book that you helped someone grow their sales by 600% by robbing their clients, they're gonna be like, gee, that's not really a culture I want to be associated with. But when you explain it's done through human to human sales, they're now sitting there and looking at you in a completely different light than the other, the buzzword of, oh, the salesperson or the sales guy. You have the time in a book to really dive deep in a way you wouldn't in a 30-second conversation with a person to try to fully encapsulate what your culture is. So we're going to open this up for Q&A in a second, but I wanted to touch on, because Mark and I are going to be running another webinar in about a month, because one of the biggest questions we get either upfront or when we run sessions like this is, what happens after you finish the book? So we touched on some great ways you could be using that book immediately, but there is also a whole host of other things you can do when we talk about marketing, advertising. So August 14th, we'll put it out on Eventbrite. Everyone who's here, you'll get an invitation. We're going to be inviting in some of our other partners, public relations specialists, book branding specialists, who are going to talk to you about all of the different ways that you can use your book to get speaking events. We have clients who have been on Fox and Friends and CNN because the book was the hook. Now, it's not always easy to just get in touch with whoever the director of programming at CNN, which is why we bring in these specialists who have those relationships. So if that is something you wanted in your strategy, we can point you in the right direction. We never want anyone to finish their book and not know what to do with it, because that defeats the whole purpose of investing the time and the money into it. So before we open it up to Q&A, I just want to let everyone know there's a QR code on the presentation. You guys can scan it. It'll bring you to our booking link. Anyone who attended today's webinar or is watching the replay, we're offering a free 60-minute content review and strategy overview, which means all you've got to do is schedule an appointment and shoot us an email with a link to your blog, your podcast, whatever it is. And prior to us meeting, we will take the time to go through your content and then spend that 60-minute session with you talking about what you're looking to accomplish and what that process might look like for you. And then on top of that, first 10 people who take advantage of that and decide they want to get their book done, we're going to offer them a 15% discount off the regular price of the project. So with that said, I know we threw a lot at you, and I do want to be respectful of your time. We have the time left. So I would love to open this up to Q&A, or even if it's not a question, if you have a situation you've encountered, something you think is relevant that you'd like to talk about with the group, I'm open for anything along those lines right now.
I have a question for Mark. How many books are you doing initially in print? And how many are you giving away in digital? Are you doing both at this point, or how do you see that moving forward?
What I did was, once you author a book on Amazon, you get an author price. So much to my wife's chagrin, 200 books arrived at our house when I was in Canada. And it says 2 people should lift this box, but she managed. And my vision is I'm going to use those instead of business cards when I'm at all these events, like the one we were at last weekend. And then you get updated book sales once you're an Amazon reseller. And then what I'm looking at down the road is I may offer like a discount to my clients if you buy more than X. And I did see quite a few of the people that are buying the ebook version, which is a lot less. And Matt not only, gets you ready for a print book, but he also does an ebook. So you have everything you need to download into Amazon. And again, I'm not a highly technical guy, but him and his team really helped me do that. And again, it's kind of fun. It's like the whole conversation changes The reason why I had this breakfast meeting this morning with somebody I haven't talked to in about 6 years is, hey, I saw you wrote a book. Let's grab coffee. We had coffee. He was telling me about his business. I was telling him about the book. All of a sudden, he's like, you know, there's quite a few people I should give this to. I'm like, knock yourself out. And then he's like, well, let me tell you about what I do since you're going to be talking to so many people. Again, I was just like, I didn't want to like die with my story in me. You know what I mean? I'm going to be 62 next week. And I'm so blessed to have so many people that have spent time training me, books that I've read. I just wanted to like give back. And now I've done it. And it's just it's hard to explain the relief that I feel. There was so much tension over the last 10 years. And of course, to Matt's credit, him and his editors were very gentle, because I was convinced all 400 pages of what I wanted to include were brilliant. And I think we ended up publishing 169. But 169 written in a way that somebody enjoys the experience, as opposed to Mark like baffling you with BS, right? So I'm really blessed to have met Matt. When we went through this whole experience, I'm like, brother, you've got a model here for people who have content. And he made what I thought was almost impossible doable. So I says, how do I help you? And yeah, I still need to send you some invoices, Matt, for applying some of what you learned in the book. But
on a side note, I joke with people all the time that I have the best job in the world, because I get paid to get people's expertise directly.
You get
that
smarter.
everyone else is paying them for.
So again, I hope this was helpful to people. Reach out if you want to like have a sidebar conversation, like, okay, I know Matt was on the call with you, but what was it really like? The thing that really made it so easy was the accountability. Matt's like, look, I know you're a busy guy, but you try to be home for weekends with your wife. What about Fridays at 11? So we booked Friday at 11 every week, and we got it done.
Cool. How long did it take in the end?
Well, because I had content, I want to say it was like 3 to 4 months. Normally, I think, Matt, you tell people 6 months, right?
Yeah. Interesting.
I just want to quickly piggyback on two things that you guys spoke about, just because I think it's important, and then we'll see if there are any other questions. But with the books, Roy, depending how you want to publish, because I know you can try to go the traditional publishing model. I give an entire presentation on the differences there as well. And my clients, we have that conversation up front. Amazon is a great way just to get the book out there if you're using it as a business tool, but it's not going to have a lot of the bells and whistles of going with a publishing company. But if you're doing it on Amazon like Mark did, because he was very clear on why he was using this book, they will allow you to order, because it's print on demand, anywhere from 1 to 999 books at a time at author cost. So, and drop ship it anywhere. So if you're going to speak in Canada again and you don't want to take that case of books with you, you can put in your hotel address, let the hotel know it's coming, and you can have a box of 100 books shipped to the venue you're speaking at.
That's handy.
The other thing I wanted to touch on, because when you said how many books, you made me think of something we didn't touch on. So Mark, how many other books did finishing this spark in your mind?
Well, that's the scary part. I don't know if you were reading all my sales hints or what, but all of a sudden I'm like, well, I need to write a book about this. And to Matt's credit, he's like, Mark, I think that's a really good content, but it doesn't flow with the intent of this book. That's another book, or that's a workbook, or so. Yeah, unfortunately, I think I'm hooked to Matt for a long time.
And then the hard part for me is making sure people realize, like, no, we're not starting that book now, though. Like, you're going to finish this book.
Yes.
That's the whole point.
That was hard for me, because it was like, wow, that's a great idea. I didn't know I knew that. And then all of a sudden he's like, you ought to turn that into a book. And all of a sudden I'm like, okay, but I got to get this done. And what his team does, and I'm not saying it just because he's on the phone, is his team did a fantastic job of keeping me accountable and getting it done in small bite-sized chunks. And it looked like such a huge mountain to climb, but here we are, it's done. Like I said, it hit the top 1% of sales on Amazon when it launched. I'm just really blessed. I wanted it out, it's out. And now the next phase, the promotion of the book, the use of the book. giving away the book, asking your friends to give away the book. There's all kinds of stuff that you can do, and Matt and I are going to touch on that in the next one.
Absolutely. Any other questions, comments, anything at all? Yes, Abigail.
How do you go about finding like a good publisher?
So that's actually an entire presentation that we give. Really, it's gonna depend what you're writing, because if you're writing business nonfiction, there's 2 or 3 major traditional publishing companies like Wiley or McGraw-Hill that you're going to want to focus on. If you're looking for traditional fiction, you've got your Penguin Random Houses and your Tors. Then you have your hybrid publishers, or your big brick and mortar ones, and there are a lot of them out there. So if you were looking to do something like that, I can point you in the right direction. I know we have Tim on the call. Tim does a lot of publishing. So it's really just being very clear on what your desired outcome is. If for you it's an ego thing of this book has to be printed by Penguin, then I'm going to walk you through, here's how you query Penguin, here's what you got to send Penguin, and here's what you should be prepared for, because it's very difficult. You probably have a better chance of making it into Major League Sports than getting a traditional publishing contract. And I just like to level set those expectations. It's not to say it's impossible, but it's going to be a long and uphill battle, unless you're truly like someone where they know you're going to sell 1 million books, like a celebrity comes to them and says, hey, I have a book. But otherwise, there are plenty of different options, Abigail. So when you get to that level, if you have a work in process and you're not sure what you want to do with it, we're always happy to sit down, have a conversation. And then if it's not the self-publishing road, we'll introduce you to somebody like Tim or help you out with a traditional query process.
And one of the first things they're going to ask you, because again, I looked into the whole route of an agent and a publisher. Again, I think it would make my mom's day, like to be walking through the mall and see her son's picture on, in one of the windows at the mall. But one of the first things they're going to ask you that surprised me is, how many followers do you have? I'm like, what do you mean? Well, on LinkedIn, and how many people are in your email, distribution? And I mean, they had seen the draft of my book, but they weren't interested in the content of the book. They were interested in how quick and easy is it going to be to sell the book. And I got to bounce, but I want to leave you with one other thing. People ask me, why'd you use your middle name on your book? Oh, and again, it makes mom happy. But the second reason is, have you ever Googled your name?
Mm-hmm.
Turns out Mark Roberts is the world's most famous streaker. So in no way would somebody Googling Mark Roberts help me in any way, right?
Yeah.
So again, even that kind of stuff, Matt and his team can help you with. So I need to bounce going into my next sales meeting. But again, this was such a great experience. Thank you to Matt. Thank you to his team. Sometimes it was frustrating to hear that my English wasn't perfect, but again, they really took what I wanted to say and made it so that people could enjoy it. So I'm very thankful. And if you want to reach out, I'm on LinkedIn. If you want to ask me questions, ask. Again, I believe in what Matt does and his team. And yes, you're probably going to be seeing a bunch more books from me with Matt. So thanks for inviting me, Matt.
Thank you, Mark, for putting this idea in my head. I appreciate you. I will chat with you during the week. I saw Linda had her hand up, so I'm still here till the end of the call. Happy to answer any other questions you guys have.
One of the things I wanted to touch on for Abigail is, while I was writing my book, I actually built a mailing list, an email list, and an address list. And what I started to do was, before the book was published, I put out a calendar every year for 4 years and kept adding to that list just to keep people interested, to let them know the book was actually coming. And then I did a contest, and I emailed all my kids and parents. And I said, okay, what does the water door look like to you? What would it look like to you if you knew what the water door, which is my book? And I had all these people draw me pictures and write to me and things like that. Those people were the first people that bought the book when it came out.
Yeah.
And so now and that's just an idea, Abigail. But if you're talking about scaling and getting your business going, get it going before you even have the book. You can do little things like that. It worked for me. It really did. And I'm a self-published author. And so now it's just getting out and doing events, and look at all your local events once you have your book in your hand. And I've also written a cookbook that complements my book for kids and parents to do. Just little things, but always keep moving forward. Never let your imagination lag. Just always think about little things that you can do to keep things interesting.
And Mark left before me. I had a chance to tell him this, or you brought it up, but he could still find his face in the mall. Just in this day and age, just because you've self-published or you've used a hybrid publisher, it does not preclude you from getting book signings. It does not preclude you from getting into Barnes and Nobles. I am not the biggest social media guy in the world, but as Mark said, unfortunately, when you're trying to sell a book, it is one of the first questions they ask for. How are you going to make this book successful? Who do you know that's going to help make this book successful?
Yeah, and
I
Matt,
was shocked when I learned that TikTok had something called Book Talk.
Book Talk. Yeah.
And if you walk into a Barnes and Nobles, at least here in New York, the first table when you walk in is the Book Talk table. So these are all independently published books that have caught such fire on TikTok that Barnes and Nobles has stocked them at their own dedicated table at the front of the store.
Booksellers want to sell books. You just have to make it easy for them.
Yep. Were you trying to say what I was about to say?
You just got to be
Sometimes
a
people get too
presence. Be a
caught up on
presence.
the writing.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yep. I mean, while the quality of the writing is important,
Yes.
too many people get caught up entirely on that. Is what I have to say good? Is anyone going to read it? Look, for nonfiction, if you're a business owner and you've got people paying you, I don't know, I know some of the fees that I've heard from some of my clients, chances are you've got something worth saying. Otherwise, your clients wouldn't be paying you what they're paying you. So it's only logical to put it in writing. If you're writing fiction and people read it, and people are constantly asking you for more, they're not doing it to be nice. They've got better things to do than pretend to read and like what you've written. Lean into that and give as much time to letting people know you're writing, right? And if you don't like something, get comfortable with it, because that's the only way you grow. So if you don't like social media, pick a platform and, I mean, unfortunately, develop it, but also figure out where your readers are, right? If you're writing a business book, chances are your Instagram page isn't going to be as helpful as your LinkedIn page. If you're writing a middle grade fantasy, TikTok's going to be much more beneficial than LinkedIn. If your target demographic is 18 to 24, you're not going to find them on Facebook. It's all these little things that you kind of have to think about, which is why I love what we do, because we don't do any of that. But we at least take the writing part off your plate so you can focus on all the ways you want to use your book or have your book help you achieve your goals.
This was awesome today, Matt.
Thank you, Linda. Appreciate you being here and sharing your experiences.
Thank you.
So if no one else has any questions, I will give you guys back 2 minutes. Hopefully you'll have the QR code. If not, by all means, email me, whatever you want to do. I'm happy to answer any questions. And I hope to see you all again, either in person or on our next webinar.
Will do. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks
guys.
very
Thank you so
much.
much.
Good to see you, Matt.
Good to see you, Roy.